After the success of Ant-Man, director Peyton Reed was interested in returning for a sequel, and Kevin Feige said that there was already a story idea in place, and that if there was a demand for a sequel, they would find a way to work it in. Initially, they actually planned on making the movie a prequel, following a young Hank Pym during his time as Ant-Man, but this didn't end up going anywhere.
It's going to be so boring.
Eventually, in October 2015, a sequel was confirmed under the title Ant-Man and the Wasp, with the majority of the actors reprising their roles. Peyton Reed, despite his past aversion to directing sequels, was excited to work on this one as it gave him the freedom to build the story from the ground up, as opposed to the first film where he was brought on following the departure of another filmmaker. And he was also keen to introduce the Wasp as one of the first female protagonists in a superhero movie. Did we all just forget about Black Widow? And Wanda? And Supergirl? And Rogue? And Catwoman? And Batgirl? And Wonder Woman? And Elektra? Xena? Buffy? Yeah.
Wow.
By October 2016, a finished draft was submitted to Marvel for approval, and though they greenlit the project, they did ask the writers to remove a scene in which Luis comedically recapped the events of Civil War, as these events were already frequently referenced in the dialogue itself, and they thought this gag was bordering on winking at the audience. Reed said that the movie would be less of a heist film like the first one and be more of a high-speed chase comedy, taking influence from the works of Elmore Leonard as well as films such as After Hours, Midnight Run and What's Up, Doc. However, the filmmakers were reportedly annoyed that Ant-Man's giant form had already debuted in Civil War rather than in an Ant-Man film, but said that this gave opportunity for character development between Scott and Hank, as the latter would have been undoubtedly pissed off that Tony Stark had gotten a glimpse at his technology. Reed was also in constant contact with the Russo brothers, who were already filming both Infinity War and Endgame, to make sure that the continuity matched up between films.
Wow. That is super cool.
For the role of Janet, the original Wasp, Michael Douglas proposed that his own wife, Catherine Zeta-Jones, play the part, but Reed turned this down, fearing that it would be too distracting. Evangeline Lilly then suggested Michelle Pfeiffer, who said yes as she was a big fan of the first film and hoped that she would finally get to make a film that she could take her own children to see. Some changes were also made from the comics. The villain Ghost had always traditionally been male, but this was changed, and Lawrence Fishburne's character Bill Foster was another size-shifting superhero in the comics named Goliath, which though alluded to in the movie is never outright shown.
Sure.
Filming ran from August to November 2017, and Ant-Man and the Wasp was released on July the 6th the following year. Unsurprisingly, it was another hit for the MCU, pulling in $622 million and was praised for its action, comedy and performances. The premise is that Hank and Hope are pissed at Scott for helping Captain America and have now cut ties with him. He's now under house arrest, but they drag him out and replace him with an ant with his tracker on it because we live in Nickelodeon now.
It just felt very real.
And after Scott had a dream about Hank's ex-wife, they planned to enter the quantum realm to save her, while they all hunted for the technological shrinking lab and cars. But don't worry, we've got plenty of Luis back! The thing is, he's not actually hammered home in this one, and he isn't even trying too hard at first. For the first half of the film, he's barely even there, so he's a lot more tolerable. But then we enter the second half, and despite messing everything up all the time, apparently he's needed to further the plot.
What's up?
They try so hard to turn him into a funny comic relief, but he's so painfully irritating. I want to stab him in the jugular anytime he's on screen. Maybe I hate him even more than Hawkeye. Nah. They even tease us with his death. Twice! Come on, don't do us like that!
You were a known associate of Scott Lang, a known associate of Hank Pym, who I've also learned has a portable shrinking laboratory filled with all kinds of juicy tech. And you gonna tell me where it is.
So because he's a friend of a friend of a friend, he's meant to know where the lab is. But they do reuse the gag of him telling his story through his perspective and the actors speak with his voice, and yeah, I can't lie, these are always hilarious and a whole lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, the ant filling in for him is somewhat funny, but it's also completely ridiculous and just doesn't seem like it fits in the film. But they do have some genuinely funny moments throughout.
We think when you were down there, you may have entangled with her.
Hank, I would never do that. I respect you too much.
You sent my suit for the mail?
Hey, the Postal Service is very reliable.
Hiya, champ. How was school today?
Ha ha ha. All right, get your jokes out now.
Although they ruin a great speech from Fishburne for some dumb comedy, but this gag does perfectly summarize parenting.
Cassie, are you okay? What's the emergency?
I can't find my soccer shoes.
And at least they're self-aware.
Relax. No one's gonna recognize us.
What, because of hats and sunglasses?
Even if later Hank uses hitman logic, dresses up as an FBI agent and walks around unrecognized. Or because two highly wanted criminals were left unsupervised in a damn room knowing they have technology that can shrink them.
I think he's right.
Scott continues to be a really likable character. I mean, it's Paul Rudd, how can anyone not immediately love him? But why do people struggle so much staying indoors? I don't see the problem. I do love his bond with his daughter. She keeps his secrets and is honestly a great additional partner to him. Wasp is pretty cool, she kicks ass, but why didn't she just shrink herself to go in and get the component they needed? In fact, with their technology, a lot of this film could have been resolved a lot quicker. There's so many car chases where they switch between big and small, but why not just stay small and then you can get away without them seeing you? They shrink the lab frequently, but at one point hide out in the woods, and Luis lets slip where they are. But this is a lab in the middle of the woods. They don't specify where in the woods, so this is like a needle in a haystack, right? Well, no, because they don't shrink the damn lab. Why would you not shrink the lab and go inside it when you're tiny so they can't find it? Oh well, the cinematography is excellent as she switches from big to small mid-fight. It looks nuts. Although, why would you switch? Because they have the same strength when they're tiny and they're big, and then it's harder to hit when you're small, so surely you just stay small. It turns out they need to get Scott's old Ant-Man suit back, but it's in a trophy that his daughter just so happened to take to school, but they lucked out so much here. They just so happen to arrive at lunchtime, Scott gets stopped by a teacher, but they just so happen to ignore it when he runs away, and lunch ends just as they get the suit back and nobody notices them leaving either. The thing is, the story doesn't make much sense. His tracker is with the ant at his house, but he and Hank are spotted in public, leading to the police investigating it. Surely the first place you would go would be back to his house to check if he's there. The first appearance of Ghost is actually really interesting because at first she seems like this sympathetic, timid and meek young girl, but then she turns sinister. It's a pretty unnerving performance. But can you guess what happened to this character in a superhero movie?
When I woke up, my parents were dead.
Of course they fucking were! It turns out Lawrence Fishburne's character has basically raised her and is trying to help her hone her powers, but his character is probably the most developed here. Hank pretends to collapse in need of his pills, and Fishburne shows compassion to help him, but it's a trick to escape. She is desperate to do anything to survive as her health is deteriorating, and she even considers targeting Scott's own daughter, but Fishburne refuses to allow her to go that far. No matter how angry and aggressive and desperate she gets, he wants to help her, but refuses to go to the lengths she wants. He's a very sympathetic character, but you do feel sorry for her. You can understand her frustration and panic wanting to do whatever it takes to survive. The heroes do genuinely want to try and help her as well, but she is growing impatient and desperate.
Call off the ants, Scott.
Well, there's a villain line you don't hear very often. And they do use the gag of Scott somehow getting back to his house in time to confuse the police, not once, but twice. It's just weird how obsessed the cops are with catching him. It's not even like he's a murderer or anything. Don't they have anything better to do? They immediately drop everything as if he's about to go and perform some terrorist attack. It's so weird because Scott is the main reason Hank and Hope get arrested, and yet when he breaks them out, they instantly forgive him. He's the reason you were there in the first place. How did he even get the costume for Hope anyway? It also makes no sense that Scott refuses to believe Janet imprinted herself inside his head. What is it with these movies having the most ridiculous and impossible magic and technology, and yet people still don't believe in ridiculously impossible magic and technology? She even possesses him! I have no idea how, it's never explained, this is silly. Look at this, even Stan Lee doesn't seem to care that much. And somehow, despite Scott explaining that entering the quantum realm is incredibly traumatizing and will take its toll on your mental state, and he was only in there for a few moments, Janet comes out of it after 30 goddamn years and is completely unaffected and is the same old self! And then somehow just heals Ava. Just like that. All resolved, yay! And after the credits, they've created a tunnel to the quantum realm, and despite Hank needing a machine to enter it, Scott just walks straight in, and then everyone dies, leaving Scott abandoned. Yay! Maybe it's just me, but I'm not a big fan of these overly long and edited post-credit scenes. To me, they should always be short and punchy, big boom, cliffhanger, end of the movie. Scenes like this I feel like should be in the actual film. But if you wait long enough, you get an ant playing the drums! The movie is alright, again. It's not terrible, there's just not much to say about it. There's interesting ideas in there and some funny moments, but Luis sucks and the story doesn't really make a lot of sense. Let's face it, this was nothing more than killing time before we could see the next Avengers film. Yeah, wait till you see what I got for you guys tomorrow.